The Galactic Council stood at the center of the galaxy, a place where countless species gathered to make decisions that could shape entire star systems. Its massive chamber was unlike anything humans had ever imagined. Towering walls shimmered, with a soft golden light, and the air was filled with a hum of energy that seemed alive. Rows of seats floated above the ground, each occupied by a different species, some with scales, others with feathers, some with shapes that humans could barely describe. The council had existed for thousands of years, yet today a small group of humans had quietly entered, their presence almost unnoticed. Captain Elena Torres, humanity's lead envoy, walked carefully down the wide corridor leading to the chamber. Her heart beat fast, but she kept her face calm. Around her, the humans, diplomats, scientists, and a few young officers walked silently, their eyes wide with wonder and a little fear. The humans were small in number, just a handful compared to the thousands of council members gathered here, yet their presence carried a weight that was invisible but undeniable. "They are watching us," whispered Lieutenant Rajan, a young human officer, glancing nervously at the floating seats above. "Do you think they will accept us?" Elena gave a slow nod. "They may not accept us," she said softly. "But we are not here to be accepted. We are here to remind the galaxy of something they have forgotten." As the humans entered the chamber, a wave of murmurs spread across the hall. Many species looked down at them with curiosity. Some stared with open skepticism, shaking their heads. A few whispered among themselves, their voices carrying tones that sounded almost like laughter. Humans were still new to the galaxy, and most delegates had only heard rumors about them. Stories of planets saved against impossible odds, of colonies thriving against hostile conditions, of humans surviving situations that would have destroyed larger, stronger species. Elena's eyes scanned the room. She saw the reptilian Varkari, their eyes narrow and calculating, the bird-like Sarathi, tilting their heads with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion, and the massive armored Brelonians, whose presence alone could make the floor vibrate. All of them had one thing in common: they underestimated humans. The lead human diplomat, Marcus Lynn, stepped forward to speak first. His voice was steady but quiet, carrying across the chamber in the universal translation field. "We are grateful for the invitation to join the council," he said. "Humanity has learned much from observing your decisions. Today, we do not come to demand power, nor to claim authority. We come to remind this galaxy that courage, resilience, and the will to do what is right are not measured by age or size, but by action." The room fell silent. Elena could feel the tension like a physical weight pressing on her chest. Some of the older species exchanged skeptical glances. Others, particularly those who had heard of human history, leaned forward, curious. Humans spoke with simplicity, but their words carried a force that many found unsettling. A young Brelonian delegate hissed under its breath, "They are so small. How can they speak to us like equals?" Elena's thoughts were elsewhere. She knew the eyes of the galaxy were on them, judging, waiting for them to fail. But failure was not in human nature, not when their ideals were clear, not when their hearts were strong. Today was the first day of something larger than any one species. Today, humans had stepped into a hall that had never welcomed them fully, and yet they would stand tall. As the council session began, the humans took their seats in the small corner of the chamber, observing carefully. Every movement, every whisper, every look told a story of pride, arrogance, and centuries-old rivalry. Elena knew it would not be easy. The galaxy did not welcome change easily, and humans were about to show the council that change did not ask for permission. And in that moment, as the massive doors closed behind the humans and the golden light of the chamber washed over them, Elena felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. The galaxy had been quiet for too long, and humanity had come to remind it of something it had forgotten. Courage could come from the smallest and the youngest, and even in a hall filled with pride and power, the voice of humanity could shake the stars themselves. The council chamber was alive with voices, each carrying the weight of centuries of pride and tradition. Humans sat quietly in their corner observing. They had come with a purpose, and yet they understood the danger. The galaxy was not ready for them, but perhaps no one ever was. The first debate began over the control of newly discovered trade routes in the outer systems. Ambassadors argued fiercely, their voices rising and falling like storms. Some species shouted in harsh, clicking tones. Others spoke in melodic sequences that seemed to float in the air. The humans listened, taking notes, watching for patterns, for weaknesses in logic. They spoke little, but when they did, every word carried clarity. Elena Torres watched Marcus Lynn stand, his tall figure calm amid the chaos. If the Council continues to fight over routes while ignoring the rights of smaller systems, he said, voice steady, then it is not a council of justice. It is a council of fear and self-interest. The chamber froze. Some delegates blinked in disbelief. They were used to long speeches filled with pomp and intimidation, not simple statements of truth. The words were small, but their impact was enormous. A low murmur spread, questioning, doubting, some even angry. The Varkari, the reptilian species with scales glinting like metal, hissed angrily. "How dare you lecture us, humans?" Their sharp claws tapped the floating podium. "You are newcomers. You have no right to tell the council what is just." Elena's heart raced. She knew the Varkari were dangerous not only because of their strength but because of their pride. Yet she remained calm, standing just behind Marcus. "We do not seek authority," she said, her voice clear across the chamber. "We seek reason. A council that ignores justice will eventually break itself." For a moment, there was silence. Then another species, the Sarathi with wings like glass and eyes glowing faintly, joined the argument. "And what makes you think humans know justice better than us? You are weak, you are small, you cannot even survive alone on one planet, let alone guide the galaxy." The tension cracked like thunder. Voices rose into a chorus of anger, confusion, and fear. Some delegates stood on their floating platforms, their forms looming over the humans as they shouted insults. Others waved glowing rods of energy and frustration. The chamber, which had seemed orderly only minutes before, now teetered on the edge of chaos. Through it all, humans remained composed. They did not yell, they did not fight. They observed, they calculated, and they spoke only when necessary. Elena knew that if they lost their calm, the council would dismiss them forever. But she also knew that silence could be dangerous. The galaxy needed to hear the truth, even if it made others angry. Then Marcus Lynn raised his voice, not in anger, but with unshakable clarity. "We are not here to compete for power or to dominate," he said. "We are here to remind you that strength is not in fear or in tradition or in weaponry. Strength is in courage, in action, and in the will to do what is right, even when all others ignore it. That is the true measure of a species." The words hung in the chamber like stars frozen in the black of space. Some delegates shook with rage, others with awe. Even the youngest human officer felt a shiver of pride. These words were small, simple, yet they cut deeper than any weapon. The council erupted into noise again, louder this time. Some species demanded Marcus step down. Others called for rules to silence the humans. Objects floated dangerously close to the humans' platform. Elena stepped forward and placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder, signaling calm. She knew the real challenge was about to begin. The council was unraveling and humanity was caught in the center. As the chaos swirled around them, one thought remained in Elena's mind. The galaxy could not contain humans, because humans did not bend to fear. They did not bow to pride. And today, the entire council would see that a small species, armed with courage and conviction, could shake the foundation of the galaxy itself. The council chamber had descended into utter chaos. Voices roared like storms, alien languages collided in confusion, and the glowing holographic screens above flickered from the sheer intensity of disputes. Even the floating platforms shook slightly under the pressure. Humanity, small in number, remained remarkably calm, their eyes scanning, their minds calculating. They realized the truth. The council they had hoped to guide had become a cage of pride, anger, and centuries of rivalry. Elena Torres felt a tight knot in her chest. She had entered this chamber with hope, believing that the galaxy could be persuaded, by reason, by courage, by truth. But now, watching delegates scream, throw objects, and even threaten one another with energy weapons, she understood that hope alone would not sway them. The council was fractured to its core, and no words could mend it. Marcus Lynn turned to her, his expression grim. They're not listening. They won't listen. Their pride is stronger than logic, stronger than justice. Elena nodded slowly, feeling a mix of sadness and determination. Then we must make a choice. Staying here will not help anyone. We will become pawns in their power games. We can't guide the galaxy if it refuses to see clearly. The chamber seemed to sense her words, the chaos growing louder as if the universe itself protested the human presence. Varkari claws slammed against their podium, the Sarathi, wings flaring, and the Brolonians' heavy armor plates rattled in anger. Every species sought to dominate the conversation, to silence the humans, to reclaim control. The humans' quiet determination, their refusal to fight back with anger, only fueled the frustration of others. Torres raised her hand to signal calm within the human delegation. Her voice was soft, but carried across the chamber through the translation field. We came to this council to remind you of courage, of justice, of honor, she said. But courage cannot thrive in a hall filled with fear. Justice cannot survive in a place blinded by pride. We see clearly now, this council cannot hear truth today. A silence, brief but heavy, passed over the room. Some delegates paused mid-shout, staring at the humans as if struck by the weight of their words. But it was short-lived. Anger and disbelief returned in waves, louder than before. The humans were outsiders, insignificant in the eyes of most species, and yet their quiet authority was undeniable. Elena knew it was time. She met Marcus Lynn's gaze. We leave, she said, firm but sorrowful. Immediately. There is no shame in leaving a place that cannot recognize truth. There is wisdom in preserving ourselves and our message for the galaxy beyond these walls. The words spread through the chamber like a shockwave. Murmurs turned to angry shouts. They cannot leave. They have no right, hissed the Varkari. This is an outrage. They are abandoning the council, cried the Brolonians. Delegates moved to block the human exit, but the humans had already begun activating their discreet departure protocols. Ships silently lifted off from hidden docking bays, vanishing into hyperspace without warning. No speeches, no threats, no hesitation. Only the firm knowledge that humanity would not compromise their principles, even in the face of centuries of tradition and anger. Elena stood on the bridge of the lead ship, looking back at the chaos through the observation window. Her chest ached with sorrow. She had hoped to inspire, to unite, to guide, but some minds were too bound by pride, too chained by fear to understand. Her voice, calm and resolute, carried across the human fleet. We leave not in defeat. We leave to remind the galaxy that courage does not ask permission. We leave to ensure that our actions, not our words, speak for what is right. As the human fleet disappeared into the stars, the council chamber was left in stunned silence. Some species seethed with rage, others whispered in disbelief. But one truth could not be ignored. Humanity had chosen their own path. They had left the council, but they had left behind a message simple and powerful. The galaxy would never be the same. In that moment, Elena realized something profound. Humanity's strength was not in numbers or weapons, but in principle. They had faced the arrogance of countless species and stood firm, and though they had left the chamber, their presence would linger in the hearts and minds of all who had witnessed their courage. The human fleet moved silently through the void, leaving the chaos of the Galactic Council behind. The massive chamber they had just abandoned erupted into noise and confusion. Holographic screens flickered as alarms blared across the council station. Delegates shouted at one another in a mixture of anger and disbelief. "They cannot leave! We must stop them!" roared the Varkari. "This is an insult to every species here," cried the Brelonians. Even the usually calm Sarathi flapped their wings in frustration, their voices shrill and panicked. But humanity was already gone. Not a single ship had been harmed, not a single human injured. They had left without fanfare, without warning, without waiting for anyone's permission. And in doing so, they had done something the galaxy had never seen. They had acted without fear, without compromise, and without apology. On the bridge of the lead human ship, Captain Elena Torres stood silently, her hands resting lightly on the control console. Around her, the crew of humans moved with quiet precision. Some were young soldiers, still trembling slightly with adrenaline. Others were diplomats and scientists, their faces solemn but proud. They all understood the weight of what had just happened. Humanity had walked away from the heart of the galaxy, and in that act, they had made a statement stronger than any weapon. Lieutenant Rajan, who had watched the chaos from the council chamber moments before, spoke softly. "Do you think they'll ever understand?" His voice carried a hint of fear, but also awe. Elena shook her head gently. "No," she said. "Not today. Not yet. Some never will. But they will remember us. And that memory will change the galaxy in ways they cannot imagine." The fleet moved farther into hyperspace, the stars stretching into long streaks of light as they accelerated. The humans were quiet, but not sad. There was a weight in their hearts, yes, but also a spark of hope. Leaving the council had been a hard choice, but it was the right one. To stay would have meant compromising their principles. To leave was to protect them. As the hours passed, memories of the council flashed in Elena's mind. She remembered the anger in the Varkari's eyes, the disbelief on the faces of the Sarathi, the stunned silence that had briefly fallen over the chamber after Marcus Lynn had spoken. Humanity had not bowed. Humanity had not begged. They had simply stood, spoken, and then walked away when it became clear that reason could not prevail. Marcus Lynn approached her quietly. "Do you think they will see it as defeat?" he asked. Elena's gaze remained on the stars outside. "No," she said, her voice steady. "They will see it as something they cannot ignore. We did not lose. We reminded the galaxy of what is possible. We showed them that courage and justice do not need permission. That lesson is worth more than any vote, more than any council decree." The youngest crew members, who had never before witnessed anything like this, looked at each other in silent admiration. They understood in their own way that history had just been made. Humanity had walked away from the most powerful political body in the galaxy, not in shame, not in fear, but in principle. And as the fleet sped farther into the uncharted regions of space, a quiet determination filled every heart. They would not be defined by the judgment of others. They would not wait for recognition or approval. Humanity's voice, their courage, and their values were already echoing across the stars, silently reshaping the galaxy even in their absence. Elena finally spoke, her voice carrying over the bridge like a calm command. "We leave the council behind, but not hope. We leave the chaos behind, but not our purpose. Humanity has chosen its path, and it is a path that no one can stop. We will continue forward, and one day, the galaxy will understand that we left. Not because we failed, but because we were true to ourselves." The fleet disappeared into the infinite darkness of space, leaving behind the shattered pride of the council and the first whispers of a galaxy that had been challenged and would never be the same. Humanity had departed. But their story, their courage and their ideals would travel faster than any ship, and the galaxy would remember. The human fleet drifted through the silent stretches of space, far from the chaos of the Galactic Council. Stars glimmered like scattered jewels against the black canvas, and the soft hum of the engines was the only sound aboard the ships. For the first time since entering the council, the humans allowed themselves a moment of quiet reflection. Captain Elena Torres stood at the observation deck of the lead ship, her hands clasped behind her back. She watched the stars stretch into lines as they traveled at faster-than-light speeds. Her heart was heavy, but it carried a strange sense of pride. Humanity had left the council not because they were defeated, but because they had chosen to remain true to themselves, and in that choice there was strength. Lieutenant Rajan approached her cautiously, his face still marked by the tension of the recent events. "Do you think they will ever understand why we left?" he asked softly. Elena shook her head gently. "Some will, some won't," she replied. "It does not matter. Our goal was never to make them understand immediately. Our goal was to act with courage and principle. The galaxy may take time to recognize it, but they will feel it in the long run." Around the fleet, crew members moved quietly through the corridors. Some were young soldiers, exhausted yet proud. Others were scientists and diplomats who had watched centuries of arrogance and pride collide in the council and realized just how fragile that system had been. Many of them thought about the stories they had heard of humanity's past, of planets saved against impossible odds, of impossible survival, of ingenuity and persistence that defied logic. And now, they had witnessed it firsthand. Marcus Lynn approached Elena on the deck, his expression thoughtful. "Leaving was hard," he said. "I thought we might change their minds, that we could guide them, but it was clear. Some minds are too set in their ways." Elena nodded, her eyes never leaving the stars. "It was not failure," she said, softly. "It was preservation. We preserved our message, our courage, and our ability to act. The council may not have listened, but the galaxy is bigger than that chamber. Humanity's voice will travel further than their walls ever could." The youngest crew members, standing nearby, listened with wide eyes. They felt a mixture of sorrow and awe, realizing that leaving the council had been more than a tactical decision. It had been a moral one. Humans had chosen honor over recognition, principle over praise. They had walked away from power, yet they carried something far greater: their own integrity. As the fleet sailed through uncharted sectors, Ina reflected on the weight of history. Humanity had been given a chance to influence the galaxy at its highest level, yet the arrogance and fear of older species had made it impossible. And still, there was hope. Even in their absence, humans had sent a message. Courage could not be contained and truth could not be silenced. She turned to the fleet's bridge crew, her voice calm but powerful. "We leave the council, but not hope. We leave the chaos behind, but not our purpose. Humanity has chosen its path, and that path will shine like a beacon for anyone willing to see it. The galaxy may resist for a time, but they will remember us. They cannot forget what they witnessed today." There was a quiet determination among the crew. They knew that the council's anger, confusion, and pride would fade with time, but the example humanity had set would linger. Smaller systems would remember that courage existed beyond the dictates of ancient councils. Young leaders would question arrogance. Future diplomats would hesitate before dismissing voices that were not loud, but honest. Elena's gaze lingered on the farthest stars visible from the observation deck. "We are not gone," she whispered to herself. "We are here, in action, in principle, in courage. And one day, the galaxy will see that the smallest and youngest among us can shake the stars themselves." The fleet moved onward, leaving behind the council's chamber of chaos, but carrying with them the quiet power of truth. Humanity had chosen their path, and it was a path of courage, of hope, and of unwavering principle. Even in the dark, even in the silence of the endless stars, their presence would be felt. The galaxy had not seen the last of humanity. It had only seen the beginning. News of humanity's abrupt departure from the Galactic Council spread like a supernova. Holographic transmissions carried the story to every corner of the galaxy, from the icy moons of the Sarathi to the molten cores of the Brelonian homeworlds. Some species laughed, mocking the humans as weak and insignificant. Others whispered in fear, realizing that this small, seemingly fragile species had challenged the most powerful political body in the galaxy and walked away on their own terms. In the halls of the council, the chaos lingered. Varkari elders banged their claws in frustration. "They dared to leave," one hissed angrily. They humiliated the council and walked away like it meant nothing. Brelonian generals slammed their fists on floating desks, shaking the very air. The humans are dangerous, one growled. They may be few, but their courage is unmatched. We cannot underestimate them. Yet, beyond anger and fear, curiosity grew. Younger species, those who had been watching the council quietly for decades, began to question the rules and traditions that had kept them under the thumbs of older, more powerful races. If humans can leave and still survive, whispered a young Sarathi diplomat to a friend, then perhaps we have been following the wrong path all along. On distant worlds, ordinary beings spoke in hushed tones about the humans, stories that had once sounded like myths, the tales of planets saved against impossible odds, of humans surviving disasters that would have destroyed entire fleets, now felt real. These stories were no longer just legends, they were evidence. Humanity had demonstrated that courage, principle, and action mattered more than power or status. Even council historians struggled to interpret the events. We have never seen a species leave a session of the council without fear or apology, one scholar murmured to a colleague. And yet they did not flee. They acted deliberately. They left with purpose. That is, extraordinary. Small systems far from the core felt a ripple of hope. Colonies long oppressed by larger powers wondered, if humans could defy the council, perhaps they could stand for themselves as well. Young leaders began to challenge the old ways, inspired by a species that had proven that courage was not a privilege reserved for the strongest, but a choice open to all. On board the human fleet, Captain Elena Torres listened to the scattered news transmissions with a quiet smile. The galaxy was reacting in ways they could not fully control, yet she felt the impact of their actions. We left a message, she said softly to Marcus Lynn. It's not loud, not immediate, but it will grow. The council may not like it, but the galaxy will change. Marcus nodded, understanding. Some will hate us, he said. Some will fear us. But others will remember. They will question, they will learn, they will act differently. We didn't need to stay. Our actions speak louder than their words ever could. The fleet moved silently through the stars, carrying not only humans but the spark of hope they had ignited. The galaxy was vast, filled with conflict, pride, and fear, but also with countless hearts that could be inspired. Humanity's departure had created a subtle but powerful shift. The council might try to regain control, but the seed of change had been planted. In quiet moments, Elena reflected on the future. We have shown them, she whispered to herself, that courage cannot be contained. That principle is stronger than fear, that even the smallest species can leave an impact no one can ignore. And across the galaxy, the ripples of that impact began to spread. Young diplomats questioned tradition. Star systems reconsidered alliances. Leaders hesitated before making unjust decisions. Humanity had left, yet they were present everywhere, in memory and inspiration and in the silent challenge that no one could dismiss. That courage and truth could never be silenced, and that even the newest, smallest species could shake the galaxy itself. Years had passed since humanity left the Galactic Council. In that time, the galaxy had slowly shifted. Some systems had grown bolder, questioning traditions and decisions that once seemed unchallengeable. Young diplomats debated ideas that their elders had once dismissed. Leaders hesitated before making unjust decrees. The seed humanity had planted through courage and principle was beginning to grow. And now, humanity returned. Not to beg for acceptance, not to demand power, but to offer partnership on their own terms. Their fleet emerged from hyperspace like a silent wave, gleaming against the stars. Ships of all sizes glided in formation, strong and precise yet unthreatening. The galaxy had felt their absence, and now their return carried weight, but also hope. On the lead ship, Captain Elena Torres stood tall on the observation deck. Her eyes scanned the horizon, where distant council stations glimmered. She felt a mix of pride, resolve, and quiet sadness. We return, she said softly to Marcus Lynn, not to conquer, but to remind them. We return not for praise, but for truth. And we will not compromise our principles again. Marcus nodded, his face calm but filled with determination. Some will welcome us, others will bristle at our return, but we do not act for their comfort. We act because it is right. Our courage does not wait for approval. As the human fleet approached the central council station, alarms blared and emergency broadcasts filled the void. Delegates scrambled, unsure whether the fleet's return meant war or diplomacy. Some species braced for confrontation, while others whispered in awe. Humanity had left abruptly years before, shaking the council to its core. Now they returned, stronger, deliberate, and unyielding. Inside the lead human ship, young crew members looked out at the stars, feeling the weight of history. They had been part of the moment when the galaxy first realized that humans did not bow to fear or tradition. Now they were witnessing the next step, a return filled with promise and principle. Torres turned to the fleet's bridge crew, her voice steady and inspiring. We did not leave to abandon. We left to teach. We return not to dominate, but to remind. Humanity stands for courage, for justice, and for action. And today the galaxy will see that those values cannot be ignored. As the fleet entered orbit around the council station, a hush fell across the galaxy. For the first time, many species truly saw humanity, not as newcomers, not as insignificant, but as a force defined by principles rather than power. Elena could feel the collective weight of attention, the curiosity, the uncertainty, and even fear. Yet she remained calm. This was not intimidation. This was truth made manifest. The council representatives gathered, their eyes fixed on the fleet. Some species bowed out of respect. Others shifted uneasily in their seats. Whispers spread. Stories of humanity's courage, their steadfast departure years ago, and their deliberate return now. The galaxy remembered. And now they understood. Elena spoke to the bridge crew one final time. We do not seek approval. We do not seek control. We act to show that courage and principle are stronger than pride or fear. The galaxy has seen our actions before, and now it will see our values in every decision we make. We return not as conquerors, but as teachers, as reminders, as hope. In the days that followed, humanity's presence reshaped discussions across the galaxy. Leaders reconsidered old disputes. Young diplomats questioned traditions. The council, once rigid and prideful, began to see that courage and justice were not confined by species or age. Humanity had returned, but it was not their ships or technology that impressed the galaxy. It was their unwavering principles. Elena stood on the observation deck, looking at the stars stretching endlessly before her. We have returned, she whispered. Not to be the loudest voice, but to be the clearest. Humanity has shown the galaxy what it means to act with courage, to stand for truth, and to lead with principle. And now, no one can forget us. And so, humanity's story continued, no longer as newcomers, no longer as outsiders,